Okay. Donna, what are you doing?
I'm taking your picture.
Okay.
And one more
And you might
thing.
show up to next week, next week.
What?
For folks on Zoom, if you do have questions, you can put those questions in the chat box. If there's something weird going on with sound, put that in the chat box as well. I'm muting everyone during class so we can give our undivided attention to Dawn. But don't hesitate to ask questions via that chat box.
John needs to mute his computer so there's no sound coming out of your
Ah.
computer.
Oh, join. I meant join with video. What am I?
Alright.
All right.
So any and all suggestions to make this sound and look better,
Is that okay?
stick them in the chat box. Thanks, everyone.
Well, I see pictures of. I see a wall over here. I actually see 4 people here, and then some other names. Anyway, hi people. Hi there. So, yeah, I guess we're getting away from interpersonal contact. You wonder what kind of psychological impact this is going to have on us. But anyway, we'll see. This is kind of warm here at the Kadampa Center, isn't it?
Do you want me to turn the AC?
If you don't mind, I'm a little bit hot. Okay. So is this microphone working? Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? I know I have it on. I'm sorry?
The power strip was not on.
Oh, okay. All right, now it's working. Okay. All right, so let's let's start out by doing just a couple of minutes of settling meditation where you can focus on your breathing. I learned something new today. I know a lot of times in the Tibetan tradition they talk about how they say when you focus on your breath, you start out with the out breath and then the in breath. That's one. Out breath, in breath two. Apparently there's it's some implications down the road when you're practicing highest tantra. But it's not a bad thing to learn now. So as you're focusing on your breath, and again, you don't have to focus on your breath if you want to be just bring your mind to one pointedness. Some people will focus on the rising and falling of the abdomen. Some people, I've known people who focus on, they have tinnitus, right? Ringing in their ear. They'll focus on that. Hey, or they'll just different things. But it seems like the breath, for example, in at least in the Mahayana tradition, yeah.
Check and make sure you didn't mute yourself on Zoom.
Okay, spiritual program. You make sure I didn't mute myself.
Yeah.
I don't think I did. Can you hear? Nod your head if you can hear in Zoom. Yeah? Okay. All right, good. All right, so
But is your computer, your laptop, not Zoom, but your laptop muted?
no.
See if you can mute your laptop.
You want me to mute it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's muted.
Okay. And we'll see if that helps with reverb. There was
All right.
echoing.
Yeah. Okay. So, excuse me. So we're going to start out with a couple of minutes, like I said, of counting the breath.
So, Don, they didn't hear what you were saying a minute ago. You might want to repeat that.
Okay, did you hear what I said about counting the breath? Okay, I'm going to say normally in the Tibetan tradition, when they say count your breath, you start out with you go exhalation, inhalation, 1. Exhalation. It's kind of like nobody else, but they say that comes in handy when you're practicing highest yoga tantra down the road, a couple of years down the road. So, but anyway, it's a good habit to get into. So you focus on exhalation and inhalation, and as much as you can, we want to try to make them equal. So the amount, the length of exhalation and the length of inhalation, you try to make them equal. And mentally, you make soft note 1, exhalation, inhalation, mentally soft note 2, and up to 10. And if you get lost after 3, which most people will, then you can start again like that. So we'll do that for a few minutes. And if you have something else that you want to choose to focus on, you're welcome to do that also. Can relax your awareness. We're going to do the 8 verses of mind training. Excuse me. Linda, did you say you could show that on the screen?
No, I tried last week and it didn't work.
Okay.
Just post it online in the Discovering Buddhism material.
Okay. Well, it's okay. Well, I'll read it. These are this real famous text, and it's full of stuff that you would absolutely never think of. Most people wouldn't anyway. And it really is about transforming your mind, and the seventh verse has specifically to do with developing Tong Lin. But I'll read through this. By the way, again, this is some repetition from Robbie's class, but you remember one of the things that was that Robbie mentioned was that, and this was a quote from Song Rinpoche, who's this great Buddhist saint who was he was unusual. I met him in India back in the early 80s. He was much taller than the average Tibetan. He's probably about 6'2" or so, and he had white hair and he had a white goatee, which you almost never see Buddhist monks with goatees. But he was a manifestation, people said, of Haruka, which is a highest yoga tantric deity. He was really an amazing teacher. He lived to be in his early 80s. But anyway, I'm going to read the. So he said, and Robbie quoted him. He said, the two most important things to know in all of Buddhism are refuge and karma. So interesting. The two most important teachings in all of Buddhism are refuge and karma. Now we're teaching this class on bodhicitta, so I'm not. Yeah, it came up.
Oh, great.
It looks nice. Yeah. So, but it all fits together because bodhicitta is part of, understanding how karma works. Has a lot to do with bodhicitta, and also understanding. So certainly, karma is part of the dharma that we take refuge as part of the really important part of the teachings. But anyway, anytime, I think the key message for me in terms of refuge is like anytime that I get in a situation where my mind is negative, or I'm in a difficult situation mentally, I'm upset, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm fearful, whatever might be going on, or I'm in an argument or in a situation like that, anytime I can bring to mind the Dharma, the teachings, and the things I've learned through my study and meditation of the teachings, it's kind of like a medicine cabinet. And I liken the Dharma to this medicine cabinet. You can reach in there and find the teachings on compassion, or the teachings on equanimity, or the teachings on bodhicitta, or the teachings on emptiness, whatever helps, whichever teachings help your mind. And as George Dreyfus he's actually the first Westerner to complete the Lorumpa Geshe degree, which is the one that Geshe Gelik has. It's like graduating summa cum laude from Geshe school. And he did this in India in the early 80s. And George said, the most powerful teaching is the one that helps your mind. So the most profound teaching in Buddhism is the one that helps your mind. So not necessarily Kala Chakra or highest yoga tantra. Maybe it'll be Tong Lin. Maybe it'll be something else. But anyway, some interesting things to think about. So here we go. Now, yeah, my glasses. I kind of like yours better, Linda. I can scroll down too, can't I? No, I can't. Okay, we'll read this. Determined to obtain the greatest possible benefit from all sentient beings, who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, I shall hold them most dear at all times. When in the company of others, I shall always consider myself lowest of all, and from the depths of my heart hold others dear and supreme. Vigilant the moment a delusion appears in my mind, endangering myself and others, I shall confront and avert it without delay. Whenever I see beings who are wicked in nature and overwhelmed by violent negative actions and suffering, I shall hold such rare ones dear as if I had found a precious treasure. When out of envy others mistreat me with abuse, insults, or the like, I shall accept defeat and offer the victory to others. There's a lot of controversy about that one because people don't quite understand it, but it's can be very helpful for the mind. When someone whom I benefit and whom have great hopes gives me terrible harm, I shall regard that person as my holy guru. In short, both directly and indirectly, do I offer every happiness and benefit to all my mothers, and I shall secretly take upon myself all their harmful actions and suffering. So that one specifically has to do with Tonglen. Undefiled by the stains of the superstitions of the 8 worldly concerns, may I, by perceiving all phenomena as illusory, be released from the bondage of attachment. So we think of the eight worldly concerns as we talked about last time and many other times. Usually we think of, we categorize the 4 positives would be things like gain and pleasure and praise and fame. So and everything else that's delicious. So we call everything that's delicious that we want could be subsumed in these four positives, and the 4 things that we're attached to not having, because it's undefiled by this attachment. So we're attached to pleasurable things, but we're also, you could say, attached to not having is the same thing as aversion. We feel aversion toward, pain and loss and disgrace and blame. So those are the 8 worldly concerns, and we're attached to deliciousness, and we feel aversion or negative attachment toward anything that doesn't go well or go our way. So that's what that verse is about. Now tonight we did the so as a way of review, the first couple of classes, and I'm going to write these things down on the. Whoops.
You can erase that. I was just letting people streaming know where to find the 8 verses.
Okay, yeah. So
Sorry.
that's fine. So I have to do this. Make sure my streamers can see the board.
What you're typing there, I can type on the
Okay.
I can type on the whiteboard.
All right.
On
So there are a series of contemplative points that we use in the guided meditations to develop bodhicitta, and we're combining. Is that Zoom thing? I mean, is that thing see me also?
that's good. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So these are the main points that you need to memorize. These actually. Well, let's put it this way: you don't need to do anything, but it'd be good if you could memorize them, and actually do them every day. That'd be really awesome. But the first one is often not even listed when we talk about the 7 cause and effect meditation that we did last week. It didn't list the equanimity meditation, but that's always the first one, right? Because remember, we're trying to get enlightened for the sake of universal living beings, not just our friends. So we have to have an equanimous mind. We have to have equal regard for the friends, the strangers, and the people that we feel aversion toward, the enemies. So equanimity is crucial. Now, you can develop compassion without equanimity, right? But it would be very biased compassion, be just for the people that we love. And what we eventually need to do is to develop equal love for universal living beings. And that's what these contemplations are all about. But in the beginning, we're just trying to start out with level ground here. So we got equanimity. Then the second one is we want to see, I'm just going to abbreviate some of this, all sentient beings, SBs, as mom. Okay? Remember we talked about how that was a special relationship for most people. Not everybody, but for most people. And we wanted to, so we went through and we talked about the beginningless, the mind is beginningless. We've had countless previous lifetimes, and every lifetime we were born, we had to have a mother, and so the mom of this life, again, these are just things these are contemplations that we do, and you can go, well, I don't believe that, but just be creatively aligned with it. This is all part of, this is a hard one to do. They're all hard to do, but if we do this meditation well, when we're walking down the street and we see somebody, we feel some, we don't feel so biased toward people. You know, we may even feel a little bit of warmth toward them. And that has to do with the next one. Remembering the kindness, okay? Remembering the kindness of all of our mother sentient beings. So we went back and we said, okay, we're going to say everybody's been our mother countless times. The mother of this lifetime has been the mother in the past countless times, will be a mother again in future lifetimes, and so on. Everybody's had that relationship with us as like mom. And then in each one of those lifetimes, our mom has been extremely kind to us. So we try to imagine we're surrounded by universal living beings in human form who look like our mom, and we remember their kindness, and we develop a sense of warmth toward all of these mother sentient beings. And again, if this meditation is done well, and you're walking down the street, and this is with a lot of practice too, walking down the street, you actually might feel connection, some kind of warm feeling for just about anybody that you see. Then number 4 is repaying the kindness, okay? Wishing to repay the kindness. And the kind of logic that's used here is, well, if somebody's done you a favor, of course you would want to repay that kindness, and so we want to repay the kindness of all of our kind mother sentient beings. So that's the next step. The next step is love, and it's a special kind of love. It's sometimes called a beautiful love, but it's love. And remember, we're trying to develop compassion. So if we don't feel a sense of connection and love toward all of these kind mother sentient beings, when we see people suffering, we could actually rejoice if we don't like them. So it's important to try to develop a sense of love, remembering that everybody's been our mother, everybody's been kind. We want to repay their kindness, and we recollect that kindness, and that helps us develop love. And number 6 is meditation on compassion. Remember the definition of love. And again, definitions are not the same thing as what of love, but the Buddhist definition of love is may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness, and compassion is may beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. So here we want to develop, first of all, we develop a sense of connection, and then we realize that everybody's suffering, just like we are, and so we wish them to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. So that's, I'm going to run out of room here in a minute, but that's okay. Then the next one is equalizing self and other. Now, one of our teachers, Geshe Donya, he said this is maybe the most powerful way to develop a sense of connection and love for others. But the point. Well, if anybody's been to hear His Holiness teach, he almost always starts out by saying, "Well, everybody wants to be happy, and nobody wants to suffer." And so that's really the main point. The main way we think about this, when we realize that we're all the same. We're all equally wanting to be happy and equally not wanting to suffer. So we all exactly the same. And the Dalai Lama says he when he does this meditation, he'll imagine like there's some imaginary line. He's over here, and there's universal living beings on the other side of the line. And and he thinks, well, of course I feel like I'm the most important one. I'm me, I'm the, but again, in Buddhism, when we start talking about emptiness, we realize that this is just a nominal I. It's not the real I. The self that we're talking about is a nominal self. So, but he says, okay, well, I want to be happy. I don't want to suffer. And then over on the other side of the line, there's this roar of zillions of sentient beings. I want to be happy, and I don't want to suffer. And he goes, well, whose happiness is more important, the happiness of this one, or the happiness of infinite others? And he says, of course, and you could, Lama Zopa would say, well, the happiness of others is more important than the happiness of one, and that's, and I think that's probably true. But when we think about it ourselves, we think, well, my happiness is at least as important as others, and that's kind of where we are here with this. We're trying to see that our happiness, that we're trying to equalize sense of self and others. That I want to be happy, they want to be happy. We all equally want to be happy, so we're equalizing self and others. That's what that's about. All right. So number 8 is this is the false. This is actually maybe I don't know if I've said this before, faults of self-cherishing, SC, self-cherishing, and I'm going to put down self-cherishing selfishness, okay? This, when I first heard the teachings on generating bodhicitta, and particularly the faults on self-cherishing, I was, it was in the 70s, and I think most people, anyway, I know from my side, the thought that I was not it's the me generation, we want to find happiness for ourselves. And yet here, the teachers are saying that thinking that I'm the most important one, that I'm this, that sort of selfishness is actually the source of all of our problems. In fact, it's the source of all the problems from the beginning of beginningless time until now. All the negative karma. If we think about negative karma, of body and speech particularly, killing and stealing and adultery, the 3 of body that we focus on in the 10 non-virtues, and then the 4 of speech, lying, slander, harsh, frivolous speech. Every one of those are driven by self-cherishing. And then greed and hatred and ignorance, pride and jealousy. So many, all the 84,000 delusions are driven by there's one demon in Buddhism, is selfishness. The self-cherishing, selfish attitude. We project a sense of self that's beyond what's actually here. We do exist. We're not saying that we don't. We do exist, but ignorance projects a false sense of self. We cling to that sense of self like it's the most precious thing in the world. And we cherish that self. And if somebody offends me, I get angry. And I'm always looking to satisfy that self. But it can never be satisfied because it doesn't even exist, number one. But it can't be satisfied. So this is a big problem for us. And it's important to get this. In the Developing Bodhichitta, this will help us develop loving kindness, a sense of loving kindness for all sentient beings, realizing that selfishness is our biggest enemy. And our biggest ally is cherishing others. So the benefits, the great benefits of, I'm just going to put down cherishing others. Lama Zopa there was a bumper sticker that we used to have in the store. I don't know if it's there anymore, but he said, for happiness, cherish others. It was that simple. For happiness, cherish others. And you think about it, if we cherish others, would we kill? No. Would we steal from others? No. Would we behave, would our sexual behavior be harmful to others? No. Would we lie and deceive others? No. Slander? No. Lying, slander, harsh and frivolous talk, all those things we wouldn't do if we cherish others. So for happiness, cherishing others is the key. Okay? So that's the next step on along this generating bodhicitta contemplative meditation line. Now, these meditations are more in we've done if we do the 7 cause and effect meditations that we did earlier, would be seeing all sentient beings as mother, remembering their kindness, repaying their kindness, love, compassion. Then there would be the supreme wish, which comes down here, this sense of universal compassion, where we take personal responsibility for all sentient beings. And then the last one would be bodhicitta. So we're getting there. But these are the meditations, particularly that have to do with exchanging self with others. So equalizing self and others, see the faults of self-cherishing, the benefits of cherishing others. And number 10 is, it has to do with, well, I can't say it. I'm at the. It has to do with Tonglen, where we're giving happiness. So let me see how he worded it. So we're going to start off taking. Even though Tonglen means giving and taking, you start out by taking others' suffering, okay? Which is the definition of compassion, right? The wish that others could be free of. It's actually the action of compassion. But compassion being the wish that others could be free of suffering its causes. So now we're imagining, and we're using our breath when we do it. When we do the meditation, and we'll do it later on. Maybe not tonight, but we'll do it later on, where we'll start using our breath, imagining that we're taking on the suffering of others and giving happiness. And we can do that literally with every breath we take. We can practice compassion, loving kindness, compassion, loving kindness all day long. All right? Now, this is giving happiness. And again, happiness, simply defined in Buddhism, is the wish that others could have happiness and the causes of happiness. Okay? Then we got number 12 is the, I like the supreme wish, but I think universal compassion probably a little bit easier to understand. No, it's not universal compassion. It's the supreme wish. It's the wish. Like you take personal responsibility for the happiness of all sentient beings. It is your job. It is your job to help every single sentient being stop suffering, and your job is to guide them from wherever they are now in the 6 realms of samsara, or just in this life, to help guide them from their current state of misery to not just temporal happiness, but the ultimate happiness of supreme enlightenment. So that's why it's called the supreme wish. And then, so you go, I take, now this sounds bizarre. And of course, if it could have been done, it would have been done. But it's an attitude that a bodhisattva needs to develop. And so if we're on this path, we at least aspire to feel this way. Now, some people might have a problem with this, but I know some people have had problems with it in the past when I've taught this class. But it's an attitude that we take responsibility for the happiness of everyone. And then number 13 is actually the generation of bodhicitta. Sometimes bodhicitta is spelled with a CH. Sometimes it's just C-I-T-T-A. Okay? So bodhi means mind. Bodhi means awakening. Chitta means mind. So it's the awakening mind, which doesn't really communicate anything. But it's the mind of enlightenment. It's the attitude that it's really 2 parts. One is the wish to achieve supreme enlightenment, and seeing that the method to do that is one's own. And let me back up a minute. The wish to help others, and the method to do that is to achieve supreme enlightenment. So those are the 2 main components to bodhicitta. So Jeffrey Hopkins, he's a prolific Buddhist translator. He used to translate for His Holiness, and he defines it as the altruistic intention to become enlightened based on love and compassion. So again, it's not this mushy sentimentality. It's actually based on genuine love and compassion. That's the fruition of having done all these contemplations ahead of it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, let's see. Any questions so far? Negative? Okay. So maybe we'll do a quick.
There is a question.
Pardon?
There is a question.
All right, where is it?
Okay, the question is, when we try to follow the 8 verses of thought transformation and it brings up negative mental states like resentment and even stronger anger, is it still good to do these 8 things?
Okay, say it again.
Okay. When we try to follow the 8 verses of thought transformation and it brings up negative mental states like resentment and even stronger anger, is it still good to do them?
Okay, that's a good question. I can think of a couple of answers. Number one is, one answer would be to persevere. Certainly, when when negative mind states arise, one of the practices that we can do just by being mindful of it is to let it go. I mean, that's and a lot of people are quite skilled at letting go of anger, letting go of resentment, letting go of pride, letting go of any kind of disturbing emotion. So, but if that's a skill that you haven't developed, you may not be ready for that particular teaching right now. It might be like too much to swallow. And Lama Zopa, and he often in the there's a book called Transforming Problems, and a lot of times whenever negative mind states come up, sometimes it's good to look and try to see what's underneath that. What's underneath the anger? What's underneath the disturbing emotion, and try to learn from that. But again, I think you have to. Everybody's so different. You have to kind of gauge how how far you are along on your own ability to handle negative emotions. If it really disturbs your mind, then maybe it's not. Maybe you're not ready for that particular one. I'm just curious. Could you tell me which one of the verses it was? I think I bet you I know which one it was, but number 5 is always stirs up a hornet's nest.
While the person is looking to answer that question, Don, I just wanted to also share that when I very first started Discovering Buddhism classes with you a long time ago, during the very first module, and it was really my first exposure to Buddhism, I remember feeling this way and just so frustrated with everyone, like, what is wrong with people? And you answered my question, this very similar question back then, in kind of the same way. Yeah. That it stirs things up once you start looking into these things and looking at your own mind. And so the answer to your question was yes, numbers 4 or 5, and also number 6.
Yeah. Well, this is not meant to be a class on a commentary on this, but I could, for example, number 5, I'll touch on that because I've heard the Dalai Lama try to explain this in teachings. It says, when out of envy others mistreat me with abuse, insults, and the like, I shall accept defeat and offer the victory to others. And you go, whoa. I mean, that's a heavy one, because that means you become and then the follow-up to that is, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a doormat and just let people walk all over me? And His Holiness often answers this one. He says, it's part of your practice. If you're ready to take this on, then give it a try. But when others mistreat you, and the defeat that you have to take is a small one. It's not a big one, but it's one that you can handle. In other words, somebody embarrasses you or somebody does something to you that abuses you in some way, and you can accept it. In terms that your practice is strong enough that you can accept it without getting disturbed, without getting angry and creating a whole bunch of negative stuff for yourself and this other person, then you accept it. But he said that's really a tricky one, because not everybody's ready for that practice. But it's a practice of a bodhisattva. It's a practice. You can imagine somebody who's very egoless, somebody who has like a bodhisattva, could accept the defeat. So fine, bring it on. I'm not attached to being right here. I'm not attached to winning, being right, justifying everything. I'll accept the defeat, and you can have the victory. We see this a lot in just apologies. My gosh, I've got the situation around my house, where you think apologizing would be like the hardest thing in the world to do, but I think apologizing is really a great a great thing, because it helps our mind. It helps the ego, which wants to be right and doesn't want to be, wants to justify it's whatever happened, even if I was mistreated, which happened in one particular situation that I'm thinking about. Letting go of that, and if it's appropriate, apologize, or at least try to work with whatever you have to work with, whatever the negativities are. So that's a hard one.
And one student did comment that for me the key point in number 5 is the out of envy part. It seems easier to give victory in a situation like that when you know the action is due to envy.
Yeah. Okay, I got what you're saying. Yeah. And even if others mistreat you, abuse you, and insult you, even if it's not out of envy, to be able to accept the defeat and offer them the victory is not easy. It's not easy, but it's something that an egoless person, the less egocentric we are, the more willing we are to give up having to be right and justifying ourselves and so on. And the next one, number 6, said, when someone whom I benefited and whom I have great hopes gives me terrible harm, I shall regard that person as my holy guru. This has to do with the thought transformation teachings, and there's a whole module on thought transformations. But here, you can. This probably happens in a lot of marriages that break up. Where somebody probably cheated on somebody else, or there was just a lot of disharmony, let's say. So here's someone who you benefited and had great hopes, but then they cheat on you. They leave the relationship. They leave you high and dry, and regard that person as your holy guru. You go, so how in the world would we do that? What would you learn from that? Well, so a couple of things you could learn from that is, first of all, trying to see every situation and every person as a teacher. But what in a situation like that, a lot of times in Buddhism we say what goes around comes around. So if we experience some negative result, it's the fruition of our past karma, and this person who we think is the perpetrator, who's actually doing this to us, is just like Shantideva uses example in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. He says, if somebody hits you with a stick, you don't get mad at the stick, you get mad at the person. In the same way, when we experience negativities, when we're harmed by someone else, the real source of the harm is, it looks like it's the person, but it's our own past selfish, self-cherishing, the seeds that were planted by our selfish, self-cherishing mind. So the negative karma is coming back to us, and this person's merely the vehicle by which the negative karma comes back to us. So what can we learn from that? Well, we can learn not to do that again, or be particularly vigilant, because like if somebody cheated on us, then we either in this lifetime or some former lifetime, the Dharma, the teachings would say we cheated on them, or somebody lied to us, we lied in this lifetime or some former lifetime. So we can learn what not to do, and also these harsh, difficult situations that we might have to endure, they teach us patience. We don't learn patience from our friends. We learn patience from people that push our buttons. So we learn patience, endurance from difficult. So these situations, this person can be a guru for us in terms of teaching us what not to do again, can help deepen our practice by helping us develop tolerance and patient endurance, and can help us develop a more equanimous state of mind. That's my story. That's what I think. There's a lot to be said. This text is loaded with, and then, by the way, there's a lot of commentaries. You can buy. Dalai Lama has several books out, a lot of books out that can go through each one of these 8 points, and give you a lot more information than I can. So let's do.
Do you have time for one more comment, Don?
Sure.
One of the participants said that I recently did this, apologized to a family member who sexually assaulted me, and then he wanted back into my life, and it brought up a lot of fear for me and more discord between us. So I don't know. And then they went on to say, so we are apologizing for the time we did the same thing to someone. I guess that's the idea.
You could think of it like that. In the situation that you just described, it brings to mind we always talk in Buddhism about this two wings to the bird, right? The wing of compassion, where we understand that maybe this person who mistreated me was suffering, and that kind of behavior is not the behavior of somebody who's a happy person, and so we develop some compassion for him. But we also have to have wisdom. So wisdom and compassion have to be conjoined, and so I'm not saying in every situation that timing is everything, and whether it's the right time and the right person to apologize to, it really depends, doesn't it? Depends on how much wisdom we have, and then the situation. So I don't know. That's the best answer I have, is that we have to bring whatever wisdom we have to the moment. And if you did it sincerely and the outcome didn't go well, then maybe need to step back a little bit and take another look, because obviously it's not a one-size-fits-all world where we do this is the answer for everybody. Every situation has to be looked at from both, at least from the Buddhist perspective, both from a compassion and wisdom aspect. So, all right, let's go back to bodhicitta, and we'll just do. We've gone through these points, but we're going to go through. We'll start out with equalizing self and others. We'll do a little meditation just to get down to the development of bodhicitta. And so if you can sit up straight and take a couple of deep breaths and settle, and let your body and mind settle for a moment. So to begin with, even when we start doing this meditation, we need to go back and reflect on the first meditation that we always do when we're developing bodhicitta, which is the equanimity meditation, where we're trying to where we see our friend, the people, the person, the people that we're attached to, and then the strangers, which is the vast majority of beings on this planet that we feel sort of indifference towards, the strangers, and then the people or that we feel aversion or anger toward. We label them as enemies sometimes. We feel so strongly toward these three categories of beings, and we know that they're impermanent, that they're changeable. that the friend could become the enemy. We all have had that experience for sure. And we maybe have had the experience where just a few kind words to somebody that we feel aversion toward has turned them into a friend. So these are not fixed labels. These are changeable labels. And in the same way, the stranger, everybody who's been our friend and everybody who's been our enemy at one point or another was probably a stranger. So again, they're not fixed labels. And so we try to see them all equally as friend, enemy, and stranger. We see them. Try to develop equal regard by not clinging to the friend, not feeling indifference toward the stranger, and not feeling aversion toward the enemy. But we're trying to develop equal regard for all being. Okay, and then the next contemplation is to remember that there is called equalizing self and others, where we think, okay, I want to be happy. I want to be happy. I don't want to suffer. Everybody's that way. Every single being. You walk down the street. You talk to people, maybe strangers, people you didn't know, but maybe you sit down and you have a conversation. Before too long, you realize that they're suffering, and that they want to be happy. And my job as a family physician. I mean, I see that all day long, every day. I see everybody's the same way. We all want to be happy, and not one of us wants to suffer. And we all equally want to be happy. Even that insect, even that cockroach that you can't stand to even look at, or the snake, or the whatever, they all are like, if you try to catch a cockroach, what are they? They don't sit there and let you pick them up. They run away. They're afraid. So everybody wants to be happy. Nobody wants to suffer. From the smallest sentient being, to the biggest one. We all want it. We all want it, and we all equally want it. So this is called equalizing self and others. Understanding that we all equally want to be happy, don't want to suffer. This is really a cool thing to do too. When you're with somebody, and maybe you're just listening, but in your mind, you might think to yourself, "She wants to be happy. She doesn't want to suffer. She's just like me. He wants to be happy. He doesn't want to suffer. He's just like me." You can just do that silently. And I mean, I've done this on a number of occasions, and it really helps to break down barriers between people. They don't know what I'm thinking. I'm not going to say it out loud, but I'm thinking, yeah, he's just like I am. She's just like I am. They just want to be happy, and they don't want to suffer. We're all exactly the same. And then we go, okay, well, where does this suffering come from? Well, in the Dharma, in Buddha Dharma, and this was probably one of the most helpful things I learned, was that taking care of number one is not the cause of happiness. Thinking that I'm the most important one, I've got to be first, me, I. That is actually the cause of suffering. It's this selfish self-cherishing that we're talking about in Buddhism. It's based on ignorance. It's based on this false sense of self. And what am I talking about? I'm saying that ignorance projects a sense of self, okay? And we all have it. And by the way, we do, of course we do exist, but we exist in a nominal fashion. There's a body and a mind, and on that we label self. But no, what ignorance does is projects a false sense of self, or like me, and then we cling to it. It's called self-grasping ignorance. And it's the cause, this is what we're talking about. This self-cherishing, selfish attitude has to do with this self-grasping ignorance. The cause of, as the teachers say, the cause of all the suffering for all sentient beings from the beginning of beginningless time up until now. All wars, all pandemics, all bad relationships, all disputes, all kinds of physical and mental suffering, because we blame, from a Buddhist perspective, sickness and all kinds of mental suffering, it all comes from the mind. It all comes from self-cherishing selfishness. If there's a devil in Buddhism, it's the self-cherishing selfish mind. And so we need to recognize, and one of the ways we can recognize it viscerally is that it's tight. We can feel it's not a spacious state of mind. It's an uptight state of mind. We can even feel a little tightness around our heart and, around our chest sometimes. It may be some people feel it. Sometimes I've noticed it in my, what they call a solar plexus or the epigastric area, but you can feel it in your body sometimes. This self-cherishing, selfish attitude is our biggest enemy, and we think it's a friend, but it's not. We think we've got to look out for ourselves. Yes, we do, but we have to do it skillfully. We have to do it with wisdom. Okay? So this is the selfishness that I'm talking about, is the selfishness motivated by this self-cherishing, by this false sense of I. Okay? Because again, of course we have to cherish ourselves. Of course we have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of our family. But we're talking about the source of suffering. And the source of happiness is cherishing others. And as Lama Zopa said, and it's a good thing to really question. Is that really true? Does cherishing others, is that really the cause of all happiness? But from a karmic perspective, when we understand, for example, the non-virtuous actions, just the 10 non-virtuous actions, we go, if I cherished others, would I kill them? No, of course not. If I cherished others, would I steal from them? Of course not. If I cherished others, would I behave sexually in a way that was harmful? Of course not. Would I lie? No. Would I slander? No. Would I speak harshly or waste their time on frivolous gossip? No. So we can see cherishing others, check it out. This is Lama Yeshe too. I'm channeling him for a second. But he, and this goes back to the 8 verses of mind training. A lot of times Lama wouldn't answer. I try to answer all the questions, which is probably a mistake. But I probably make some errors, and if I do, I apologize in advance. But sometimes Lama Yeshe would say, he would give an answer, and then he'd say, check it out. Check it out yourself. Check it out against your experience. Check it out against your experience and see if selfishness causes most of your problems. Self-cherishing selfishness. Is that the cause of all of your problems, all the world's problems? Is cherishing others the cause of all happiness? Check it out. That's what Lama Yeshe used to say that all the time. Check it out, dear. Check it out. So I'm suggesting let's check it out and see if these teachings are valid. See if they make sense. So then we go to the taking suffering from others. So this again, we'll do this using the breath next week. I promise we'll do it next week. We'll do the Tonglen practice. But in Tonglen, we imagine that, for example, we start out with ourselves, and you can imagine yourself now, and what you want to do is take not only the suffering that you're experiencing now, but your future suffering, the suffering of aging, old age, and death, and all the problems that you're going to have between now and then. You imagine all of that suffering, and you imagine yourself sitting in front of you now, right? You're imagining your reflection of yourself sitting in front of you, but you imagine that you're real, and you're going to take on your future suffering. Your suffering now, it could be something mental or physical now, and all your future suffering, and you imagine that you take that from yourself And we'll be doing it in the form of taking black smoke, and we'll take it into our hearts. And it immediately destroys the self-cherishing selfishness. Because this is the action of compassion, isn't it? Taking on the suffering of others. So we're taking on our own suffering into ourselves, and it destroys self-cherishing selfishness. And then we imagine the second part of this is giving happiness. So then we imagine that we give ourselves, happiness and its causes, the karmic causes of happiness and its causes. Okay? So this is taking on the suffering of others and giving others happiness and its causes. So this is Tonglen. And as I said earlier, when we'll do this meditation next week, it is the most important meditation in all of Buddhism, because it helps us to develop compassion and loving kindness. And we can use it all day long, every day, with every breath you take. There's stories of these great Buddhist saints who practiced Tonglen once they learned it and became and practiced it and became skillful at it, they used it with every breath until they died. They used it up until their dying breath. And we'll even talk about how to practice Tonglen as you're dying, because that's really the most important time to be able to keep your mind, in a positive way. And if we can learn how to bring love and compassion to the moment of our death, that would be incredible. Okay? So here we've gone through these 2 points of taking on others' suffering, giving happiness, and then the supreme wish. And the supreme wish is like, I am responsible. Like you might say, Donna C's, she's not here, but I think Donna C's has this supreme wish, like I'm responsible for the Kadampa Center. Whatever happens, I'm responsible for the success of the Kadampa Center. Robbie Watkins the same way. Geshe the same way. Lama Zopa absolutely the same way. But it's like, but this is bigger than that. This is like, I am personally responsible for the happiness of universal living beings, even the ones that I currently label enemy. Universal living beings, I'm responsible for their happiness. And not only I'm responsible for helping alleviate their suffering, right? But guiding them all the way to nirvana, and then, because the train doesn't stop at nirvana at the Kadampa Center, it goes all the way to Buddhahood. So I'm responsible for guiding all living beings throughout all space and time, from wherever they are now, which is suffering, to supreme enlightenment. And it is my responsibility alone. Now that is outrageous. It sounds outrageous, but it's the attitude that we're talking about cultivating. It's the attitude of a bodhisattva, a spiritual warrior who has this attitude, this supreme wish. I must become enlightened in order to help all sentient beings. And it's based on sincere love and compassion, not mushy, not some sort of ooey gooey, mushy, but it's sincere feeling of love and compassion and connection to universal living beings. And I must guide them from suffering to supreme enlightenment, and I must do it alone. It's my responsibility. And then we realize we don't have that ability. Just like when we're doing Tonglen, we want to take on the suffering of all beings. Of that, or in the situation we'd work with ourselves, but we'll work with others and universal living beings eventually. We want to be able to take on the suffering of universal living beings, and give them supreme happiness of enlightenment, but we can't do it because we haven't done the work ourselves. We haven't eliminated our own faults. We haven't developed our own positive qualities. So we have work to do. We have the spiritual path to practice, and we're fortunate because we live at a time when the Dharma exists, we're fortunate enough to have the good karma to be attracted to the Dharma. They're qualified teachers that can give us these teachings and that are the embodiment of the teachings. So how great is that? You know, we're very fortunate. We live in a very fortunate time when we can actually be guided along the path to supreme enlightenment. And so this is bodhicitta. We aim to practice to develop supreme enlightenment in order to help others. The goal is to help others. The method is to develop supreme enlightenment. So again, the goal is to stop others from suffering and guide them to the highest happiness. And the method to do that, we got to do it ourselves. We got to get there first. We got to go first. So this is bodhicitta. I must become enlightened in order to liberate all sentient beings, and that is based on love and compassion, sincere love and compassion. And this is what, Lama Zopa says, this is the Dalai Lama. This is what he eats and breathes. This is what all the great Buddhist saints of the past, and I believe that Lama Zopa really feels this, really sincerely feels this way all the time. And it's the antidote to self-cherishing. That self-cherishing, selfish attitude cannot survive when we have bodhicitta, when our mind is pervaded by this attitude of bodhicitta. Impossible. So it's the antidote to all of our suffering and the cause of all of our happiness. So we got the whole path. We got renunciation, we got bodhicitta, we got emptiness, we got all the different levels, all the Lam Rim teachings. We've got generation and completion state tantra. We have qualified teachers that can guide us in these ways. So it's it's an amazing time to be alive, to be able to have access to these teachings, and to even have even the slightest aspiration to have bodhicitta is like so amazing. Even just a little bit, even just having a little feeling for these teachings is a huge, karmically creates huge benefit to our mind. Huge benefit to our mind. So, we've come to the end of the evening. So we've generated, individually and collectively, we've generated like some positive karma. We planted in our garden. Hopefully it was weeded before we get. We have to weed our garden, right? So that's what purification's about. We weed the garden and we till it. We fertilize it, and then we plant these seeds. And these are the seeds that we want to ripen, not just in a new Tesla, which wouldn't be wrong, wouldn't be bad to have, right? Or the end of the coronavirus would be great. But these seeds we want to dedicate to supreme enlightenment. We want these seeds to be dedicated. We can dedicate some of them to the cure and cessation of the coronavirus, but most of them we want to dedicate to the supreme enlightenment for all living beings. Okay, thank you for your attention, and those of you who stuck it out. And we'll see you next week. And next week we're going to do all of these meditations again, but we'll talk about some of these things too. But we'll do all the meditations again, and we'll spend a lot of time on the Tonglen. I promise. So thank you. Any question? If there's anybody wants to ask a question, you can check out now if you want to. But if there's a question, I'll try to answer it.
And for those on Zoom, I am going to turn the hostship over to Beth. And if you would like to stick around and do a Zoom discussion group, feel free. But if there's any last questions, feel free to type those into the chat box if you're on Zoom. I don't see anything, Don. I don't see anything. Except a thank you. All right, Beth, I'm going to figure out if I can turn this over to you. Bear with me a moment.